Hi, welcome to Kiss and Tell Magazine podcast. Today we're talking about the taboo subject of abortion, and with my co-host, Dr. Sabrina. Welcome, Sabrina.
Hey, folks. Hey, friends. Hey, Jenny. How's it going? And again, yes, we're going to revisit Roe versus Wade, talking about abortion. How does it affect us? Your thoughts, your feelings, your real feelings, and particularly also then getting to hear from you, Dr. Jenny, which we are just now getting to start to, hear more of your voice and your thoughts and personal feelings, opinions on things. And this is something that's very important to you, I know. And so this is like the kickoff for our new type of even format for the podcast, of this unfiltered podcast where, there might be cussing, there's emotions. It's actually our opinions on these topics instead of just kind of writing generally in the way that we often do in the magazine so that it's more inclusive for everyone. We don't really put our opinions very often, right? So this is that new format. So thank you, that we're starting this, and I'm super glad then to hear you and your voice on this topic as well as our others. So happy to be here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for joining as my co-host. And I know this topic, abortion, is sensitive to most people, and I understand that. It is, but it was sensitive prior to the overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022. I must admit, when it was overturned, I felt like somebody hit me on top of the head because I was shocked that the Supreme Court and anybody who was behind the scenes to make that happen allowed that to happen. That was a fundamental right for women, and then and to take that away, I don't know who that is helping. I still don't understand who it's helping by doing that.
You said you felt like totally. And you said you felt like you were hit over the head. Will you talk more about that? I think that's really important. On what did you feel? Was it anger? Was it rage? Were you freaked out? Did your stomach sink? What did you feel in response to this? Because that is what this is about, isn't it?
But it is. I mean, I don't think there's enough discussion. Like, granted, I'm busy doing many things for candid purposes, so I'm not on top of every little nuance that's been talked about with abortion. I just hear it in blurbs. And we wrote a couple articles about it on candid too. But from a personal perspective, as a female, somebody taking a choice away, to me, is a kick in the gut. Because to me, the freedoms, to me, that was a freedom, and it was taken away. And and look, I'm all for whatever you believe. If it's pro-choice, if it's pro-life, hey, go for it. But when you tell someone that you don't have a choice, you're going to do it how we believe you should be living your life, to me, that is the biggest irritant. That's one of my biggest irritants. My favorite thing about life in general, especially in America, is that freedom to choose. And only I, typically, not saying that it's always like this, but typically in my life, any decision I make choice-wise, A or B, let's say I choose A, whatever that may be, and it turns out that was a stupid idea. Well, I can only blame myself. I can only blame myself. Okay, I made the wrong choice. It wasn't supposed to be A, it should have been B. But I live with that because I have that choice, that freedom to make
Mhm.
errors. Now,
Right.
granted, when
Many
it comes to abortion and being pregnant, that's a huge issue. That's not a simple thing to
Mhm.
do. But
Mhm.
typically, anyone who has become pregnant without planning it, which I would say that happens more than doesn't, that
Yes, agreed.
pregnancy. But anyhow, let's say if you're single, if you're in your teens, if you're in your early 20s, you're not thinking about, hey, I want to become a parent. What you're thinking about is
Right.
finding a mate, spending time with somebody you're attracted to, dating, enjoying the pleasure of sex, and all the fun that comes with that. It's not in your head at that age to, hey, I hope I become
You
pregnant.
don't have their full prefrontal cortex.
Right. You don't have that until
They
you're
don't even
20.
have, like, their full, like, brain capacity to
Right.
make those decisions about these
Right.
long-term things. Like, your brain's not even set up for that at those ages yet. 25.
Right.
Keep going. That's good stuff.
And, and truth be told, even when it is set up for that, it doesn't mean you're ready. You know, I mean, I mean,
Yes.
it,
Doesn't
you
mean we're ready, right, just because
know,
you've got a prefrontal cortex
yeah. So,
doesn't mean you know how to make the good decisions either, right? Like, that's the
right,
whole thing.
right, exactly. And anytime we're making decisions for us being pregnant or having a baby, it's huge. It's not, whether to live in an apartment or
Yeah.
whether to buy this car or whether to take this job. This is a human being, Like granted, they're not human beings right away. It takes the whole time of pregnancy for that to happen. And if anything, we should be worshiping mothers more than we do. I mean, carrying a child
Yes.
in your
Yes,
body,
I love that word, worship. Yes, we should.
uh, I mean, carrying a child in your body, it takes a lot out of a female body. It takes a lot of work.
It
It
does.
takes, I keep going to the details. Are not there in my head. I think you probably know more than I do about this. But we're not doing that. What we do when it comes to abortion currently, and we did it when it was a choice, let's be truthful here, when it was still a choice, we still judge people for making that choice. So we
Yes.
shame them. So, and now since it was overturned, we're shaming them more. And now the word murder keeps getting thrown into the conversation. That when you make that choice,
Yes.
you're murdering the infant or the embryo or whatever. But that is uncalled for. It's a hard decision to make for anybody. Sometimes you have to make it for health reasons. Sometimes you make it because you were raped. Or sometimes you make it because you know you cannot take care of the kid and you don't have support
Mhm.
financially or the other parent. So, um, whatever the reason, it's still a choice. And now it's not the states, it's been left to the states, and that's become a hurricane on itself. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, and were saying and going into a bit about the different reasons why people would want to have an abortion and need to have that choice as a legal and easy choice. You also brought up too about the stage of baby and when is it, human or embryo or whatever cells. And so I want to talk about that as well. Um, and then us going more into of what does this mean and then what are the options and of course what can we do. So the first thing I do want to speak to is the first thing you said was the feelings about this, about feeling hit over the head and kind of gut punched on the choice. And I know that, of course, a lot of women would be in families. It's not just women, right? There's men and there's couples and there's partners that are having these conversations. Men are also affected. We're going to talk about that more in 2 weeks
Yeah.
from now on abortion, how men are affected in the
Mm-hmm.
couples. So it's not just the women. However, right, our bodies, the things are happening to us, the pregnancy is happening to us. And so choice is not something that gets to be granted by other people. That's not like human choices. To me, that's not something that another human gets to tell someone, because what
Right.
is their motives? Two, speaking on that, and this is not going into some conspiracy theory or bad governmental talk. I think a lot of Americans know, and I certainly know that outsiders looking in can see that there's some effed up policies that aren't working out well, and that America's not working out well as far as somebody else making decisions for its
Yeah.
people. Second, based on religion and anything, especially when we talk about abortions and things, which is often the conversation, which then leads
Mm-hmm.
us to this murder conversation. So one
Right.
choice, it's bullshit that, and especially men,
Mm-hmm.
you don't get to weigh in on women's bodies. I know you got to for years because, you were strong enough to, and that's how you get power, versus communicating around discussing what should be done with women's bodies is already, what are you doing? Like, that is not your place. That is not who you are. We are the creators of the world.
Mm-hmm.
We make the decision for our bodies, not the person who can't even get pregnant. You don't even get to weigh in on this conversation in my book. So for me, the feeling that I asked you earlier, this just pisses me off. Like you said, just from the choice perspective, whether or not I ever
Right.
wanted to have an abortion, whether or not I've ever had one, or even ever
Mm-hmm.
got pregnant, it doesn't matter. Just from the
Mm-hmm.
choice, and that somebody else thinks that I get to tell you, Jenny, what you're going to do with your body, your life, your choices, when you also brought up medically. There's all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of reasons why people would want to need to have an abortion, right? It's not just a want, medical necessity, okay? But yet we also have this argument about, oh, but it's a baby and it's got choices. And so
Mm-hmm.
that baby trumps you as the adult that has to take care of it, is what these types of laws, in my opinion, are doing. Is
Mm-hmm.
saying that this baby that's not here, that's not a baby, that doesn't vote, that isn't paying to feed my mouth and isn't paying for my roof, but yet we want to consider it a full blown, human, doesn't even have brain yet, doesn't have nervous system, can't live outside the body.
Right.
So, from a medical perspective, being able to say, this is not a viable, and this is not an argument, it's science, it's what is. So, it's not a viable human. It cannot live outside of the body. It is dividing cells. Literally, it's cells that divide. So it looks like a cluster of cells up until a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Then the argument is, well, it gets a heartbeat pretty early on, even before 7 weeks, 8 weeks, you can see a heartbeat happening. So for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, around that 8 week mark is when they've decided this is now a human. And so now we're going to talk about rights. We're definitely going to come back around to your opinion, Jenny, and I'll give it back to you. But it's important that from the doctor, the medical perspective, that
Yeah.
we talk about this so we can get rid of that part of the conversation. So not
Right.
even until 8 weeks are we even talking about something that's other than dividing cells. Just because it has a heartbeat does not mean now it's got consciousness, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean now it can survive on its own outside of the body. Just
Right.
because we have medical advances that also allow preemies, even when there's babies at like 7 months, they've got 6 months. 6 months is about that break off, even like medically and with interventions that we can keep a baby alive. That's
Right.
with interventions.
Mm-hmm.
That's doing extra stuff to make sure that this baby stays alive. We also have survival of the fittest. We are animals. We are still animals from that perspective. And those babies would not survive out in the wild. If we didn't have medical intervention, those babies wouldn't have been viable. They wouldn't have shown up. They wouldn't have been able to make it a lot of times either. So
right,
I'm going to wrap up that part of this medical conversation on talking about, is it a human? Is it have rights? You should feel really bad and shame on you for killing and being a murderer. That's not what we're talking about here. This is not
right,
killing. This is not murdering. This is not consciousness until even a certain point. And at
mm,
that point, even if having this baby is going to kill you, is going to cause you even more medical, physical, mental energy than what you have, and that this is
mm,
going to send you into a spiral. It's going to kill you. It's going to dangerously impact your life. What are we
mm-hmm,
talking about?
right,
Right? That is the decision you get to make. Why should I have to make an already hard decision, rather, an already hard decision that I thought about, right? This isn't just
mm-hmm,
something women are going to the clinic to be like, let me go have sex so I can get pregnant so that I can go have an abortion.
right,
That's not the process. It's already an emotional kind of a freak out if you're not ready for it. If you were planning it, then fabulous. You're
mm,
already freaked out. You're already trying to figure out, how the heck am I going to do this? What is my life going to look like? You weigh out all the choices. I've had an abortion. I
mm,
weighed out all of my choices. I
right,
weighed out my emotional choices and the fact that I have to live with, am I okay with
mm,
making this decision for myself? To
right,
let anybody else have any input that is not having to take care of you and pay those bills or live your life after. I had postpartum depression. I was suicidal. That happens because of hormones while pregnant.
right,
I was a mess for a year and a half. I was a mess and I
mm-hmm,
had this baby. If you know that that's a real possibility for you and you're on meds or you have any sort of mental health issues, this is a terrifying thing to do.
right.
And you may not
Having,
recover.
having a baby, yeah, mm-hmm,
Yeah,
right,
I know that was long-winded, but I feel like it was important to get to some of those points on what it is the arguments, and then now let's bring it back to the realities. I know that this affects you personally, Jenny, and that's why you wanted
yeah,
to talk about this. And so, like, of those choices, and what would that have looked like for you and family? And I know you've got a personal story with that that I would love to hear.
yeah, I've had an abortion too. I was in my teens, you know, and that
Mhm.
I didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground in my teens. I mean, so that was my decision to make. Um,
Totally.
and
And
because
here's the thing, like, the being blaming a child
uh,
having a child. This is
right,
not 100 years ago when we were
right,
gonna die by 30. So you would have, right? So a child having a child that didn't have resources, you
mhm,
are trying to raise yourself, not even
right,
trying to raise yourself, and you would have been shamed horribly if you would have messed up with that child in any sort of a way, not knowing
right,
how to teach it. And so isn't it interesting that you might have most likely, we see how it looks, been shamed about what a crappy job and that you're a teenage mom and how dare you be a teenage mom, and
right,
yet those very same people are the ones with picket signs outside of these places where you're trying to get support so that you're
right,
not creating that situation, shaming and damning you for being a murderer. So which is it? Which is
right.
it? Do
Yeah,
do we
I
do
know.
we, which is
Yeah,
it? What do you
yeah.
do?
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
there's too
And
much.
so if we're trying to
Right,
make decisions on what makes other people happy, you
right,
have to live with that. And you can also thrive with having
mhm,
made that decision,
right.
right? Like,
Yeah,
people don't
sure.
want to talk about that.
Right,
What happens if you thrive based off of that decision?
right. I mean, I can't say I thrived. I mean, I didn't feel shame for doing it. Society does a wonderful job back then and currently, even with the overturn of shaming you. How dare you
Mm.
make that choice? How dare you have
How dare you do what you want with your body?
how dare you live a life that I wouldn't be living, which I can
That.
guarantee I can guarantee you every person who makes okay, I won't say every, but most people who make that type of flippant remark have a
Yes.
story of their own. that they wouldn't want
Yes.
people to know about. So,
Yes.
um, but my story with having one of my teens, it didn't change my behavior. I still had sex, I still dated, I mean, all that fun stuff. And then in my 20s, I had pregnant again. And but I couldn't do an abortion because you can't do that. Oh my goodness. But the person I was seeing, we weren't really a couple in technical terms of couple. And, but I still had the means to, raise the child. So instead,
Yeah.
I gave the child up for adoption. And
Mm,
trust me, that was as painful, if not more painful, than choosing
mm,
abortion
mm,
because I had
mhm,
judgment for that. Here I am willing
mhm,
to give to a couple that cannot have kids mine, and I was still judged by people for doing
mm.
it. I'm just like,
Ah,
what? It's like people don't give people enough. It's too quick of a statement to say, "How dare you?" or
mm,
quick of a
mhm.
statement to say, "I wouldn't do what you're doing." Instead,
That.
instead of saying, "Oh, I'm sorry you're going through that. That must be a struggle." Man,
Mm.
it's something sympathetic
It's
or
that
empathetic.
simple,
I know.
isn't it? It's
Yeah.
really that simple. It's and
Yeah.
here's the thing, it takes just the same amount of energy to say, "Oh, how dare you," and "Shame on you," and then come from whatever position of knowing that you think you're
Mhm.
at, the
Right.
same amount of energy to then
Mhm.
ask someone how they're doing.
Right.
"How can I support you?" Instead of being so quick to tear down and
Right.
saying it was a bad decision, okay,
Mhm.
if you wanna here's the thing, here's what I challenge is if you wanna let especially in these types of situations, if you wanna let somebody know that they made a bad decision, that you've decided they made a bad decision, with that statement, just hand them a stack of $50,000 or give them something that they need that would actually help support them on
Mhm.
and that's part of what probably was that helped them make the decision. So,
Right.
if there's a medical issue that they had and they made that decision because they might die,
Mhm.
well, then you donate whatever body part they need
Right.
so that they can have the baby, so that they can live the life, so that they can live according to how you want. That's how ridiculous it sounds
Mhm.
to me. And
Mhm.
so I think it's a powerful statement to say, "How dare you live the life that I wouldn't live?" And that really is what this whole thing is about. It's about power
Right.
and control. It's
Right.
about sad humans, people that already feel bad about their life and the choices that they made, and the only ways that they can make themselves feel better is by shaming and trying to bring this negativity and this sadness and this hurt. That's what it is. You're
Mhm.
trying to hurt someone that's already hurt.
Right.
What kind of bully piece of shit are you? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's what it is. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
this power and control over your body, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. And how I live my life. You
Yes.
know, I don't do that, nor have I ever done that, to anybody because I'm not in your shoes. How
At
can I?
all.
I mean, how can I say how you should be living your life? I mean,
It seems so audacious to me. Like, I
yeah,
it doesn't
like,
even like you said, it doesn't even cross my mind space. It doesn't even
like,
cross my mind to say something horrible to somebody for a decision that they've made for their life that does
like,
not impact me at all. I don't have to bail them out. I don't have to
like,
do anything about it except maybe hear it,
mm-hmm,
right? Like, hear what's going on. And at that point, all you have to do is if you really don't want to hear it and you don't want to be a friend and you don't want to be whatever or compassionate or empathetic, you could just say, I don't, I, I don't have anything useful to say here. Like
Mm.
you could even say that. I
Right.
don't have anything useful to say. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to be quiet if that's the case.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or say, I don't know how to contribute. I don't know what to say.
Or what do you
And,
need?
yeah, it's,
Wouldn't that be
yeah, what do
amazing?
you need? Well, it's
Wouldn't that be
not,
amazing?
yeah, yeah,
We
what
just
do you
actually
need?
ask the person,
Yeah, what do
"Hey,
you
oh my gosh, I have no idea what you're feeling. I have
need?
no idea what that looks like. I don't know
Mhm.
how to help. What do you need?" That is legit. If
Right,
more people used that just across the board and not just on this topic of,
right,
I don't know what that means or what that is like. I hear that it's painful, or I hear that it's scary, or I would imagine. I don't know
mhm,
nothing about it. What do you need?
right,
That's just fair too. If you really don't know what to do to respond,
mhm,
Americans are notorious for not knowing how to respond, and so then we really downplay the situations a lot. We're not good at that, honestly, I think.
right,
Um, when we're uncomfortable because somebody else is uncomfortable, we get really weird.
right,
We
yeah,
get really weird. So, Jenny, what do you think, like, so we acknowledge, right? We excel.
mm,
I think it's bullshit. You think it's bullshit. It's crap. People shouldn't get to make choices for other people. We disagree, and yet here we are, right? And
right,
so the real repercussions that I think of immediately is I start thinking, oh shit, are we about to get back to, some really like kind of medieval
right,
home abortion practices, back
right,
to hangers, wire hangers? We don't even see them hardly much anymore out here in the
right,
world, but that was a thing not that
right,
long ago.
right,
My mother's generation, our mother's generation, where we heard
mhm,
about it, it was a thing. Even when I was younger, I saw
mhm,
somebody drive past a clinic with the wire hangers
mhm, yeah,
hanging off of a wire hanger, hanging outside of
mm,
their door against the protesters. So people these medieval ways, if they have no idea what to do for themselves, natural methods, whatever those are. And
mm,
there's herbs and there's other things that people can do besides pushing themselves down a flight of stairs. People used to do a lot of really dangerous things uh,
mhm,
to have an abortion that could cause death to themselves because it wasn't an option. So, one, this pushes people into, well, now they're going to figure it out. And figuring it out without medical support becomes very
right,
freaking dangerous. And then
right,
number two is, then what are some of the options? And do you know of any? And if anybody, has some to send in, is then, is it legislation and getting involved in politics? Is it having groups to teach more women, about options, or just being support? Like what do we do? I feel like a lot of us, and I'm not saying you have the answer, but maybe we brainstorm that, let a lot of people, like, now what do we
right.
do? How do we fight back that
Oh,
it's going to matter, and soon, you
right.
know?
I mean, well, one thing is voting.
Okay. Yeah.
Vote, 'cause it will be on the ballot, in all the states, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I know they're trying to overturn in some states that you can't even take the book, not the book control, the pill.
Ooh, the day after pill? They're
Yeah,
trying to make it so you can't even take the day after pill? I
yeah,
don't even see, I feel like
yeah,
I'm super, like, let me pause real quick.
yeah,
I've been traveling, and I'm not in mainstream world right now because
yeah,
we've been in the, and so, and I don't watch the news. I don't
mm,
involve myself with a lot of what's going on,
mm,
honestly, because it's so negative and it's ridiculous most of the time.
mm,
So I didn't even real so they're also trying to overturn the morning after pill
yeah,
of the
so
thing that you could do for yourself
yeah,
before you're even actually pregnant,
right,
to help make sure we don't have to end up at the clinic and be called murderers.
right,
They're trying to overturn the
yeah,
use of the morning after pill. Like,
yeah,
see,
and
that's a whole
some,
nother, I didn't even know
yeah,
that.
yeah, in some states
That's fucking ridiculous.
they're trying to make it legal for you to get it, and that any physician that prescribes it would
That
be in
is
trouble.
so
Hmm. Yeah. Now
so
the
with that
problem with
said,
that,
because this is a very real reaction, obviously, that I'm having right
yeah.
now.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
with that said, I'm starting to formulate how I would almost answer my own, like, question from the pure rage perspective of, like, what I would want to do and what does this look like. For me, this brings it back to what is the real issue again? To me, this real
Mhm.
issue is about power and control, and it's about power and control from men.
Right.
So I know that that's not the direction that we were trying to go in, but for me to be able to speak about this honestly and truthfully, then I need to speak about this part honestly and truthfully, which again, I'm going to reinstate the point that I said before. Men have no business weighing in on a woman's body and her being the creator of our literal race that brings life to this planet, that
Mhm.
changes the census, that gave birth to these ass clowns that hate women, that
Mhm.
want to power, control, suppress women, so much so to we are the life bringers and soul bringers to this freaking planet. And yet you think you get to say how we can control that. And we know that this is a power and control move because if you're trying to take away and we know it's not about babies at all. And we know that
Right.
this whole conversation, no matter which direction it comes from, for the most part, isn't about babies either. It's not
Right.
about them and murder or not. It's about women's rights. It
Right.
is about women's rights and us not going all the way backwards into some medieval BS to where,
Mhm.
again, and it's about shaming that damned if you do, damned if you don't. Whether you get the abortion, now if you get an if you don't have the abortion and you do the thing that makes the people happy and adoption, which is a great option and is super lovely, really freaking hard decision to make, you're still being shamed. And then now we can't even prevent the bigger shame
Right. Right.
by having responsible sex and then doing something to responsibly make sure we don't have to make bigger, more painful choices later. This
Right.
just pisses me off to a whole nother level. And so for me at that level, then what does need to be done is then it needs to be fought at that level. Is that and then truly now it sounds like a man hating rant, which it's not. However, it's a certain people and other people don't make these decisions. Is
Right.
now it is a fundamental. It is about being a woman that it's not we don't need to fight for our place and that we should have a voice because we're second class citizens and property of not
Mhm.
just these men but then clearly the government.
Mhm.
This just to me reaffirms to America how much we are government property. You are not a sovereign being. You are not once you pick up a birth certificate. So this whole thing then just really it's not just then about it is about voting. It's about voting, but then it's about making as much freaking noise as possible as a woman, not just on this abortion stand, but on men clearly shouldn't be leading us then. Men shouldn't be having it and then it turns into a now it's a woman against man and now it's a eradicate man thing.
Right. And that's
We need
not
balance,
what.
right?
Right. Well, we need balance. I don't mind both choices. I don't mind,
Mhm.
uh, and there are women who support not having an abortion. There are women who are 100% pro-life, and that is what they believe. So there are women who are supporting this movement too and
Yeah.
decision, but
The suppression of
regardless,
more women. Women who support the suppression and repression of their sisters. Yes.
but oddly enough, it does
Yes.
happen. However, to me, it's just easier to balance it out by
Mhm.
allowing you choice. You live your life, make those choices, and you live your life and make your choices. I mean, it's not about
Totally.
forcing. As long as no one,
Yes.
I mean, I know abortion is becoming a law thing, but it's allowing people back to the freedom of,
Mhm.
how what happened in Roe v. Wade, I mean,
Mhm.
we could talk about many things, but my argument too about the overturn is there's too many kids in the foster care system,
Oh,
and
it's
there's
terrible.
too many kids not eating, that
That
they're going hungry.
American American child hunger, people not eating, it's huge. It's a thing
But
in America. People don't think that we have poor people here. Like, there's some strange thing that we do. But yes, keep going. That
right, I
yes.
mean, those numbers outweigh the numbers of people having abortion. I mean, if you run the statistics, there's more kids in the foster care system and there's more kids not eating. If they're lucky to eat one meal a day,
Mm,
and to me, that is more, that energy, putting
mm,
energy into solving that is
yes.
a bigger call. And it would make America look awesome by us doing
Well,
that, you
well, it
know?
also would be that solution would be more in alignment with what America is saying the problem is, right? America's saying you're killing babies, which is taking less from our pool if we
Right.
cared about that. And so yet we already have a ginormous pool from people, and I'm just going to say it. It's going to sound however from people not having abortions, right?
Hmm.
From what for whatever reason we have this surplus of kids. Obviously, that is not the only reason, and I totally get that. That is not the only reason why there are children in the foster care. I was a foster care advocate. I've worked very closely with them. I've worked with the families. There are lots of reasons why children are in the system.
Right.
However, the biggest reasons that I saw, me being a foster care advocate, me being in the system working with them, the majority of these children were abused,
Yeah.
sexually abused. Majority were sexually abused, never mind their physical neglect that was happening,
Right.
those types of things that were happening. And so what we're saying is don't have the abortion so these kids that are either unwanted or uncared for in the way that they need to then
Right.
get put into the system. So we're saying let's put more kids into a system we know they're not doing well in. We know
Right.
the statistics, and if you don't, they're not good. Have a look. For children that are in the foster care system, look up what their survival rate is, their depression rates are, what their drug use rates is, what their suicide rates is, what their depression rates are, and how much they cost America for their
Right.
entire lives. I'm not putting that on them by any means, but it is so much more of a burden if we want to look at it that way. Our system is terrible. There are
Hmm.
beautiful stories that get to come out of it, and I love that for those people,
Hmm.
but there's not a lot of hope. The amount of children then that are trafficked and abused
Right.
within those systems, like that's literally what it's set up for, I feel like in America. I feel like the foster care and the adoption system for America is set up for that freaking ring for children to disappear. So
Right.
then we're just feeding one problem to feed the other instead of like you said, what are the actual solutions? The solutions are you have choice to do what you want to do,
Hmm.
and then let's support the places that you think then you support. If you're concerned about the children, as you should be, let's feed them. Let's
Right.
put more money into these places, the foster care system, and
Right.
into for taking care of the children,
Yes.
right? Like to
Right.
actually help them become, these adults that can take care of themselves as well.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean,
Do you have any other thoughts about that?
yeah, no, I agree with you. We should put more money into that, more energy into feeding kids to, helping them not be in the foster care system, to educating young parents.
Housing,
Yeah, yeah,
like
help, yeah,
housing
but
for the parents. Why are we
right,
worried about the abortion or not abortion? Help them get
yeah,
housing so that they don't
right,
have to make the decision for an abortion. Do I eat or do I have a baby?
right,
Like
mm-hmm,
let's make these really hard decisions that people are having to make What if we actually met that need?
Right.
Imagine that. So, I'm just even thinking for myself on like, what does this look like for me today? Besides us coming on here and us getting to just, and expressing. First, it's getting to express and having spaces for this to say, this sucks. And just getting to
Right.
voice that out, right? Of yes,
Right.
it sucks. Okay. Now what? Now we acknowledge that this sucks and that it shouldn't be this way. Now what?
Right.
And so I know I find myself in that place of me as a person and as a therapist, as a doctor, as as somebody who's in this channel, I
Mm-hmm.
could write about it more. I could create groups.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be a therapist or a doctor to
Right.
create a support group,
Right.
that if you've had one, if you've got thoughts about it, if you just want to help other people, then we could create these different groups of, hey, do you need a safe space for us just to talk, to vent, or
Right.
maybe there's another group that does brainstorm and gets together and does legislation and does it from the politics angle. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
need it from all the different angles. There's people who just need to talk and to have support and have a safe space to go. And then there's the people that need to, take up the torch and, burn down the buildings or, don't burn down buildings, but,
Right.
take up the torch and do the cause from these different angles. And I know if nothing else, that being able to have this conversation, even for me, having had one, I would love empathy and compassion when I'm struggling
Yeah.
instead of more shame or hurt. And it reminds me that if there's any part of me that wants to judge someone else's experience, what they're doing, the decisions they make, having this conversation today then also helps to remind me to, on any topic, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just on any topic, um, it's not my business unless
Right.
it is, right?
Right.
Unless you make it my business, it's not my business. And
Right.
so I'm not going to weigh in. I could support, but I'm not going to weigh in to make choices on topics that don't literally affect me in my life. I have no business weighing in on. I have no business, saying something to the contrary for those people if I have no idea what that service means to them. You
Right.
know? So
Right.
I feel more aware even just to be able to have that reminder from this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel when it comes to religion. Exactly that. I'm not
Mhm.
religious by any means. However, I respect the right to be religious, whatever it is that you believe in. But
Mhm.
I can't judge you for being that way when I don't know it well enough to understand it. I mean, it's
That or
hard.
have any desire.
Right,
Regardless, it's if I don't
right.
even have a desire, then
So
I don't need to judge it.
right, right. Why should I judge you for believing in
Doing something I
something?
have no interest in.
Right,
Literally. Why
right,
am I mad at you for doing
right,
something I have no interest in?
right.
That's
That,
really what we're pissed off about.
right. If it matters to you and it makes you happy, then that's what's important. It's not about
Totally.
what it does or doesn't do in my
Yeah,
life. So,
totally. And that's the basic principle we're talking about here, isn't
but
it? Yeah,
mhm, yeah,
for
it
sure.
is. So, thank you all. Thank you for helping me and being my co-host, Dr. Sabrina.
For
And
sure.
join us in 2 weeks on June 13th. We will be live and we're going to talk about this from the male point of view because we do know men have feelings and there
Oh, for
are
sure.
men,
And it does
there are,
affect them.
yes, yeah, there
My
are,
husband
right, there
my
are
husband and
men,
I have talked about this.
yeah,
That his partner from a whole bunch of years ago had an abortion, and he was a teenager, and how he still feels and thinks about it now, and that he didn't get to process that, and especially at 19, and a boy trying to process that. What does that even look like? He doesn't know how to do that. So we're just now because actually, Jenny, just to share this piece, because he knew that I was doing this, and he asked what the topic was, and I said, hey, it's on Roe versus Wade and these abortions. He had some things to say. Like, he was just like, yeah, I didn't really get to process. I didn't know what to do. I still don't know exactly how to feel about it. And so then how is that affecting he and I, and then the
Right.
children that we have, and all of those things. So this absolutely affects the men, and they have thoughts and they've got feelings, and it catches them
Right.
up in things in their life as well. So again, it is not just affecting us, but in a very real way, we know that the men have something to say as well.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
thank you
So
again
please,
for joining.
yeah. So
Don't
please
put,
join us for that.
yeah,
I do want to remind folks is, if you feel strongly, you feel something about this, you've got an opinion. Again, this is a new format that we're using and utilizing for KNT. We have our
right.
other podcasts, we have our articles and things that are definitely,
Mhm.
inclusive. It's not so opinionated, if you will, on what our actual thoughts are, and really more informative, educational, and trendy. But as we go into this new platform, I do think it is very important. If you feel something, you don't have to agree with what we say, but if you're angry in whatever directions, then you also can send those in. If you've got questions, if you need resources, we're also opening these types of forums, giving our opinions as well, because we're also trying to sort out how we want to be with this and what we're going to do. Send those in. What's the best email for that, Dr. Jenny, on people sending in their questions, their information, their input?
They can send it to info at kissandtellmagazine.com.
Okay, so info at Kiss and Tell Magazine. Our regular website is down below. You'll see it on the scrolling ticker, www.kissandtellmagazine.com. You can also
Mhm.
contact us through there monthly. We've got regular articles that are coming out covering trending, whatever's going on, talking different age groups, different groups of people, all kinds of subsets within sexuality, and different lifestyles. So there's lots of different resources, education, and things. We have a conference coming up, here in a few months. Jenny, you want to mention that real quick for
Yeah, in
our Kiss conference?
November, yeah, in November 7th, 8th, and 9th, we're doing a Masculinity Matters conference. And
Masculinity Matters Conference. Yes,
yes, and we're doing that because last year we did literacy conference,
yes,
and we figured it was only fair to talk about men this year and
for sure.
give them a voice because we know they struggle as much as females do, but
Yes.
sometimes we don't talk about it like we do with
Not near
females.
enough. Not
Mhm.
near enough, right? We could talk about a lot
Right.
of these topics, but one thing we have heard, and one thing we do know, and so this is also in response to feedback, is there isn't enough stuff for men out there, and especially on some
Yes.
of these issues, just like what we're saying in 2 weeks' time, the Roe v. Wade from the men's perspective and how they're affected. So this is us to be able to meet that need. So you sending in, and every time you comment and you interact and that you send in your messages, we are listening. And so this conference is a reflection of that. Also, us in doing the 2 weeks, Roe versus Wade from the men's perspective, on the unfiltered, unapologetic podcast, so
Yes.
that we can get more of that information. So it does matter. It makes changes. Thanks again for hanging out with us, for engaging with our content. And please, as always, send in your stuff. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to know, what you want to talk about. Join us in the conversation with Kiss and Tell Magazine. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Jenny, as always.
Thank you too. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one.